There we go. Okay, we're recording this. So I would like to present Julie Puentes from HorseLink, just outside of Austin, Texas. Julie, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, your herds, your property, everything wonderful about the place.
Yeah, nice to be here with you today. Yeah, it is hot. It's record heat today, they are saying. Could reach 100. And that's just miserable this early. But we'll get some days. Today happens to be bad. I'm camped out in the shade to try and stay cool through this. But welcome. Yeah, we are here in Bastrop County, which is outside of Austin. We run HorseLink out of this property, and HorseLink is a nonprofit. Kind of got a dual mission. I call it a reciprocal model. We take horses in and give them a permanent home, but also continued purpose. They're all retired horses from either competition or some sort of work or job. They can't perform and be athletes at that level anymore, but they're perfectly healthy and still have a tremendous amount to give. So we bring them here, we let them live on this property in herds and be horses, but they also get to have continued purpose doing equine assisted learning and therapy programs for people. So the horses, we give back to the horses give back to people, and then the people who get support and benefit from the programs and heal go back out into the community and keep that giving going. I mean, it just is something I'm really happy and proud to be offering.
Awesome. So who do we have in the field behind you there?
In the field behind us, we have all of our brown geldings, bay brown geldings. We didn't plan it this way. It naturally happened. We have Matisse with us, who's off to my left. He is an eventing horse. He's 24 years old.
Wow.
Let me just turn around here. We have right behind me Todd. He is actually the inspiration behind starting HorseLink. He is my own personal horse that I've had since the time he was born. I owned his mother and born on my property. He's also 24, was a hunter jumper. And his half brother Roman is right behind him, mirroring him.
Completely.
So much alike. He's a little shorter. He was also a hunter jumper. Then we have Pilgrim, who was also a hunter jumper, and he is 23 this year. Did competition in Texas and California, was just an outstanding, won all the time, champion horse. And then we have Ricky way in the background. He's our biggest horse here. He's a Hanoverian, and he was imported from Germany as a baby. He was a big dressage horse, and is, oh gosh, I'm going to say he's about 21 right now.
Wow, excellent. So who else do you have on the property? I know you have a few more.
PJ, you can see him. He's way in the background. He's our oldest resident. He's 29 years old. He's a thoroughbred. He's had multiple careers, like many of these horses have. All the thoroughbreds started out as racehorses and then transitioned into a second career, and then ultimately ended up here. So PJ is an example of that. He was a racehorse and then became a hunter jumper. He really is, he keeps track of everybody. He monitors what's going on here. He checks in on everyone. He makes sure everyone's safe. He alerts us as anything is, out of the ordinary. He sometimes, when he talks to the mares, thinks he's still a stallion. That's not great, but he's still full of life at 29. He's amazing. Nice. Smart. And then we have Fallon and Zach are off to the pasture to the right of me. Some gelding. Fallon was a nationally ranked dressage horse, originally born in Canada, Linda. And really just a cool horse, matriarch of the. And nice. Zach is part Andalusian and part warm blood, which is a little bit of an unusual combination. Wow. Beautiful. He's like a Fabio of horses. He has a big. And he was a jumper, and he has a really advanced arthritis in his hip. And so he walks with a little bit of a limp. He's got a little muscle atrophy. we baby him for all of that and keep him happy. You know, he's amazing. He's a horse that really exemplifies how resilient horses are and just how accepting they are of whatever their circumstances are. I mean, he walks with a limp, but he is happy. He eats like a horse, and he's friendly, happy, and rolls and tries to play with Fallon, but they live together because he can't really run around with the other horses.
Nice.
I,
Yeah.
I think he's about 20 now.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. And way off in the distance, we won't be able to see them today because they're in an entirely different pasture, are two more mares, Nirvana and Liberty. Nirvana was a jumper. She's a Holsteiner. And then she lives with Liberty, who is our only quarter horse on the pasture, a little black quarter horse. And we think she was mainly used for roping. A little bit lacking in her history, but that's what we've been able to piece together.
Excellent. And you have some more four-leggeds on the property, I believe, if I'm not
We do.
mistaken. What else?
Two and two actual cows. One that both the steers used to be bulls, but we stopped having little.
And what kind are they?
They are red Brangus and red Ball.
Okay, yeah, massive.
That cat, very friendly, and like to be a part of things. When we have programs here, they will often hover around and watch what's happening. And,
Really?
they're really sensitive, amazing beings too.
Yeah, I guess they're prey animals as well, so it makes sense. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. As a form of introduction, can you tell us the story of how you started? It's a bit you touch on it and a bit of it in your article, but I think it's a really interesting story.
Yeah, so my husband and I bought this property back in 2007, and we had no idea what we were going to do with it. We just always wanted some property, and I think maybe a weekend place, something like that. I had in my mind someday I'd be able to retire my horses here or keep horses here. It was kind of a distant dream, and I never really knew how that would come about. And then what happened was in 2011, two things happened within a couple of months of each other. One of them was that we had horrific wildfires in Bastrop, and it ended up burning 34,000 acres. Massive. And went on. We could not get into our property for a week. Did not know if it was burned or not. We had cows on the property at the time, and we had no idea what was going on, what was happening. So when we finally got back to see the property, we walked around the whole thing. We drove in, and houses and people's places were burned on either. It was very spotty. Some houses were perfectly intact. Some were burned to the ground. It was so bizarre. It was surreal. And we got to our front gate, and everything looked fine. It was untouched. Nothing burned. And so we walked around the entire property. Right at the end, we're way in the back of the property. We're at the top of the hill, and I looked down. I was like, what in the world? And we realized that an entire back corner of our property had burned. It was black and scarred. I still have a tree with, burn marks on it standing that we keep as a reminder. And you could see where the firemen had broken into the property, They'd come on our property, thankfully, and put a fire line and stop the fire on our property. So, gratitude, amazement, you name it, how we felt, and so lucky. And yet we were very, very sad for all the destruction we saw all around us. Our neighbors right behind us place was completely burned.
Wow.
So, I really wanted to do something for the community and wanted to give back. It also happened to coincide with my horse Todd having to retire. He was trying to recover from sensory ligament injury in his right leg, and I had rehabbed him for a year and a half, and he was sick. And then the barn I was at had a horrible case of strangles go through the barn, and he got had a horrible case of it, had to go spend a week in ICU.
My.
And had to stay in a stall standing for, I think, 5 to 6 weeks to recover. And that blew his chances of his suspensory coming back. It just froze after that.
Yeah.
So he, at 14 years of age, and I thought, well, obviously this is the time to do something. This is my dream. I wanted to have a place and give back to the horses who give to us so generously throughout their lives and do whatever we ask of them and try so hard for us. I'd always wanted to do that. So my horse went first and we gave back because we felt so lucky.
Wow. That's there's nothing to say about that. It's just the universe saying, here it is. Like, it's time. Wow. Wow. So, sorry?
I was terrified. I didn't know how to start.
Yeah.
I had a lot of people supporting, helping me along the way, and that's why it's happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one step at a time. Yep. So obviously you looked, and I know from being there, is you live the horses outside. And with equine leadership, we've always believed that horses as close to nature as possible provide us with that, that model of living that we can learn so much from. And I've asked other interviewees what does that look like? How do you accomplish them living out aside as close to nature as possible? But what are the challenges in it too? Everybody's had different challenges. It's been really interesting to see and listen to different challenges from different land, the way the land is, to everything. So how do you accomplish them living out? And then what are some of the challenges?
Well, how do I accomplish them living out? Well, first of all, I have an intention for it, right? I want them to live as horses would choose to live or are meant to live, have lived in nature for millions of years. So that I have that intention. And we have tried very hard to listen to the horses and let them guide us a little bit on that. They do, I watch when a new horse comes in, or I have an idea of where they'll go. When we first started growing this, the horses just lived together. Whoever came lived in our biggest pasture. As we acquired more horses, some had special needs. Some needed just to be separated. We started getting more mares in, and that became kind of an issue. So we have just followed their lead and let them tell us where they're comfortable, how they want to be. We, of course, have run-in sheds where they can choose to go in out of any weather or get shade, and which is very important here in Texas, and get away from the bugs, because there are lots of bugs and flies. But yeah, we just let them do their thing. They eat grass. That's what we want them to do, is graze as long as they want to every day. We don't get to have grass all the time throughout the year. In the winter, January, December, we're low on grass, and in the summer, when there's droughts, which there often are, we have to supplement with hay. So we'll throw round bales out for them, and we do, feed them twice a day still. They get, we've got senior horses here, so a lot of them need supplements and things like that. But yeah, the hardest thing about it probably is, I guess when one is injured or sick and needs to be separated and brought in, we do have a barn for that, and we do have stalls that we can use for that. We try not to do it, but we've had to do it in the past. They get really attached to each other, so that can be a challenge. You have to balance them being stressed out, being separated from their friends and herd members, to how safe can they live outside with whatever conditions going on, hoof abscess or something like that. Yeah. I think too, then just monitoring them to make sure that they stay safe. Fence lines and things you find in the pasture, and maintenance and upkeep. But horses know how to do this. This is their next. So
love it. Yeah.
As long as we don't totally micromanage.
I love it. That's a good way to put it. That's bringing the business into the field, eh? Micromanaging. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
and that's part. I'm a worrier. I'm a
Ah,
worrier.
yeah,
Yeah, at that
yeah,
point, a little thing is wrong, and I want to
yeah.
take care of it, but I have learned that help them how you can, and do, of course, whatever needs to be done. But they really do have a lot of wisdom and knowledge about how to take care of themselves.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and then, if I recall, you had your round pen right in a field.
Yeah,
So
it's a
when
barn.
Yeah, so when you're doing workshops and things, are the horses? Do you have horses in there too, so that they're like
So,
you when they're working the round pen? Somebody's in the round pen. Are there horses loose in the field as well?
yeah, yeah. So we kind of rotate who we use. That's
Hmm.
one of our tenets here. We really try and make sure that there's kind of equal distribution of work, if you will.
Hmm.
We also let them, as much as I was saying how I let them guide me how they live in nature. We also listen to them about when they want to show up and be a part of things and work. And that's really kind of an important part of our philosophy here. And
Hmm.
it's possible how much they communicate to you, yes or no. They want to be there, or they don't feel like it today, or
Yeah.
they don't a resonance for the group. You just have to follow their lead. And so um, we will take them and put them like in this pen where I am right now, which you can see the round pen from, and then we can come, whatever horse goes in the round pen, we can just come grab and put him in the pen. We also have a small pen like this near the barn where we can do the same thing.
Sure. Excellent.
And
Awesome.
PJ, 29-year-old, that pretty much just gets to do whatever he wants every time. And so he out or whatever he wants to do. He
Excellent.
usually
And does he engage a lot?
depends on the day. I
Yeah.
mean,
There's no.
very engaged, and there's a wonderful story where he had been injured, and we'd kind of said, PJ, you've been injured. It was pretty significant. We didn't know if he would come back, and he did. We're like, well, PJ, if you don't want to work anymore, you don't have to. We're not going to ask that of you. You've earned everything, you know.
Yeah.
And there was a group, and I wasn't facilitating that day. They were out sitting in the trees, and they were kind of in a circle talking and getting ready to go out for the day. And I was in the barn with PJ, and I got very clearly he was staring at these people with me, and I was like, he really wants to work with these people today. So I kind of went over and whispered to one of the facilitators, PJ's telling me he really wants to work today, and just keep an eye out. He might show up and tell you. So I just wanted to let you know. Well, go and do this exercise. It's an exercise we do at the very beginning of each one. It's observation of the horses. We call it Meet the Herd, where people just get an introduction to the horses in a safe way across the fence, and they observe them and see which horses they resonate with or are drawn to, or what they notice about them. Also, what are they noticing about themselves when they do this? And PJ walked up to the group, found a guy, and went down on the ground and started rolling right in front of him.
I'm here.
I like this one. And we're like, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I had two older horses that worked till their last day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not heavy work, but it's important work.
It's very important work.
Yeah.
And, they take on a lot emotionally and energetically to do it.
Yeah.
And so cognizant of that.
For sure. Absolutely. So then let's move into, you spoke a little bit at the beginning about your model of work, but that horse-human model. So, I mean, if you want to touch again a bit on the model you have of giving those horses that have had one purpose or two or three, a third or fourth or second chance. But then how does that translate into humans? Where do they meet the humans, and what stage of life are the humans in? So
Yeah.
I will over to you on all that.
Well, we have chosen to focus on the adult population who is experiencing some sort of significant life challenge or transition. That would be equivalent, to a horse having a job and a life and a family and having to retire and being thrown out in the pasture. That's a huge transition for a horse. So we work with veterans. We work with anybody who has had stress and trauma, PTSD, people who have had cancer survivors and trying to get back to a new normal, someone who's experienced a significant loss, death of a loved one or something like that, and any kind of grief and anxiety. It's really people who are needing to have a new beginning, start over, a way to get back to whatever their new normal is going to be, which, a little bit speaks to all of us a little right now. It's people who have, had these very traumatic experiences or stressful or lost. All of us in some way or another are experiencing some of those feelings right now. So that's where so there's resonance there. The horses have been through a transition. The horses experience loss here.
Yep.
That they understand it. We have lost 2 horses in the past year. Wow. 2, important members of our herd that were very loved, and so the people and the horses together meet up and become present with these issues.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. What do the horses bring to it? Like, what kind of, how do the horses step in those times?
Well, what they do for us, first of all, is help us just acclimate and understand how to be in the present. They are always there. And so we know as humans, when we can be in the present moment, you can start to feel and understand at that moment that everything is okay. And that, the future comes from being right here, right now. So the horses model that for us. They hold space. They will be there for you without judgment in any emotion or state of being you're in. They show us the ways in which maybe our protective mechanisms or our defenses get in the way of us having a true connection with ourselves or with other people or beings. And, that's a real impediment to healing. You don't have that social connection or that connection to yourself. I think that's the way they show up most.
Excellent. So how do you create space out there for humans? And you spoke a bit about the horses holding the space, but how do you create all that space?
Again, kind of what I said about how they live outside. There's an intentionality to it. We have a true intention to be a safe and welcoming place for anyone who comes through the gate. That's at the forefront of our minds for when people arrive. We always start the day in a circle under some of our beautiful pine trees. And the facilitators that work here all of us know that creating that space is so important for how the rest of the day goes. So we are allow ourselves to be vulnerable and participate in some of the opening exercises about what we're sharing and who we are and how we show up. We don't try and be something that we're not. We're not trying to impress. We're trying just to be ourselves and be with people. So I think that makes a huge. We also stress that, we have some knowledge and some experience with this and we can guide them, but we're not the experts. The horses are. Yeah. It's like we're learning right along with them every time. There's never a time that we have a program that I facilitate, that I don't learn something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That creates the safe space. And just, the farm itself the setting is pretty. And
It's
we
very
have,
pretty. Yeah.
Birds, we have the wind chimes, we have, yeah.
It's the whole thing. It's a whole package. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's so, I love, and I don't see it everywhere. I've seen it some other places, but down in the south there, your home and everything is encased in the property. And often I think a very North American thing is the house and then the barn and the fields. Whereas there, it's everything, and it's not just it seems other places I saw, it's the fences around everything, and everything is encased in the property, and that was such a special feeling.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a special feeling. I mean, I feel it's a very, very special place.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you spoke a little earlier about philosophy, and you've spoken about intentions. What are some of the maybe the philosophies that you run your HorseLink under? Is there a set of values or principles or philosophies?
Yeah, I think I spoke when I say listen to the horses. One of the main philosophies we have, the horses are our teachers. Mm-hmm. I really consider them our co-facilitators. They are equal, right? It's not us demanding what they do or directing them to act a certain way or training them to be a certain way. That really, and I look to them to share with me what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's very, very paramount and important to what we do. I was having a conversation with our farm manager last week, and she had worked for another organization previously, and she was noticing, she said, it's just so different. It's so vastly different than the place I worked before. She said, you really don't work these horses or train these horses to do the work. And I'm like, well, no, you don't have to. That's not the point. I never know what's going to happen when I jump in with somebody. I have no clue what's going to happen. I just have to see what happens and follow that because they're going to tell me. So it's about listening to the horses. That's a huge, huge value.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then, of course, acceptance without judgment. I mean, that's another one. We accept the horses that come here exactly as they are and love them and welcome them. And that is the same for every person that comes here.
Yeah. That's a big one. Horse and human. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important. And,
how did you make that? This question comes up, and I'm going to follow, as you said there, just follow it, is how did you make that transition? Personally, that from a competitive field to where we're telling to now where we're listening. How was that transition for you, or how did you make it? Like there's something in there it
was a little painful, I mean, because you are fighting or learning a new way to be from a way you've always been. So it's having to let go and surrender the things that you thought you knew or the way things were done. I mean, my whole life, right, I started writing when I was 5. Mm-hmm. So when I first started dabbling in this work, a lot of my writing friends will tell you they had no idea what I was doing. They knew something was up. They were very curious and they would try and ask me questions, but I was very tight-lipped. I did not feel safe sharing with them, some of the ideas I was having, the things I was experiencing. I was off getting trained for this in Montana. I would go for a week and they're like, what are you doing up there? What are you doing with the horses? What are you learning? And I'm like, you know,
Not much.
stuff, and I would fall back on that. But it became increasingly difficult for me to ride the same way I always had and hold the same beliefs I always had. I had to make a transition. So it was slow. I'm going to tell you, it was slow. I did talking about it finally with my friends and my trainer. I got brave and I invited them out to do a day and show them what I did, which was so much fun. And they took to it, like bees to honey. They loved it, enjoyed every minute of it. And I think, started having some of the same awakenings themselves. But it just kind of happened naturally.
Yeah.
And I think too, it was interesting. Part of what helped, as if you look back on things, you always see how things played out to get you where you were. I mentioned that Todd had the suspensory injury. So the year and a half that I was rehabbing him at the barn where I rode, I was having to do things like get on and walk for 30 minutes or walk for 45 minutes, building up to an hour, and I'd be in there walking him while watching people ride. So all I did was observe and think about and notice the things that I was learning and how they were impacting people on their horses and their interactions and their relationships with their horses. And that really started me down that tunnel, and of course made me reflect on my own relationship with him and all the horses that I rode.
Sure. Yeah. And that sounds like it so translates into the folks that you work with now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all go through transitions. It's just how we see them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and horse, more than anything I've ever been around, any beat I've ever been around, they show you how to do that. They are just so accepting of whatever is and allow it. I mean, I think if you've ever watched a horse in a rainstorm out in the field, a lot of times they don't go into their sheds.
No.
They stand out under a tree in the middle of the field. They kind of lower their head and they just stand there and wait. Yep. They get soaking wet and they're just they trust the pass.
Yep. Absolutely. Brilliant. So let's move to some stories that maybe you could share of transitional moments or aha moments with your clients or those that come there. Any stand out? I'm sure a few.
Yeah. It's so funny because it can be hard to pick ones out, and there's so many that stand out in my mind, and there are also so many that sometimes they get lost. Like you stay and move on, but one that keeps coming to my mind recently was with Liberty, who's one of the mares up in the pasture, the little quarter horse. There are some days where you are working with someone who is, for lack of a better word, shut down. They are not aware of how they feel. They've never considered really their feelings. They're afraid of them. They're just really very boxed up.
Yeah.
And I was working with someone that couldn't name a horse that day that he felt particularly drawn to. He didn't really feel anything. He didn't pick up anything from any of the horses. He had no intuition. He had no observation. He really didn't have much to say about himself. I mean, it was really, there was a hard time connecting with this guy. And it came time for him to go into the round pen with Liberty. I find, we try to let the people tell us which horse they want to work with. He didn't care. Didn't have a horse. He really, whichever one is fine. And I said, well, just pick one for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. Just so he went with Liberty. And Liberty, you know, she's an interesting horse. When she came here, she was pretty traumatized. She'd had some sort of rough treatment in her life and a little bit of neglect. And she was also very sad because the people who had rescued her were giving her up to us. They had some tragic things happen in their life and had to give her up. And so she was really sad, and she wouldn't let me catch her for 3 months when she first got here. Months. Couldn't get, finally earned her trust, and now we call her Statue of Liberty because, man, she's like, you catch her or you work with her, and she's so good and sweet and just wonderful, loving horse. But so I was like, wow, what's going to happen here, right? And I was a little worried. Like, I don't, and as much as you're a facilitator and don't want to try and create something, you want someone to have a good experience.
Yeah, of course.
So I had to surrender to it. I was like, okay, well, we'll just see what happens. Maybe nothing. So we do a thing before they go into the pen, the body scan. It's a way to just do a baseline of what sensations you're having in your body, where you are, what you're taking in with you to the experience with the horse. And so I did this with him, and he got, he didn't have anything. And then I asked him to turn around and to look at Liberty before he went in and see if anything changed. And I'm sitting there watching him, and I see him start, like, he's standing up, and he just starts leaning forward, almost to the point where he's going to fall down, and then he jerks back up. And he says, what in the world was that? I don't know. What was that? That looked like you were just falling forward. And he said, I really felt like my chest was being just pulled forward. I said, well, your body showed that. That's exactly what you did. And I said, so I'm guessing that Liberty says she's ready for you to come in and, just see what happens. He went in there and connected with Liberty in such a sweet and profound way. I mean, he was hugging her, and he came out with tears. He was crying. And it was like in front of our eyes, he had been broken open. And he said things like he had never felt or experienced love and acceptance like that before. Oh, that was even possible. And it completely transformed in front of our eyes. So that one will stand out forever.
Wow. Yeah. And unexplainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still, I can't tell you exactly, but
it did.
It really did.
Wow.
A story I think about is working with a woman so excited to be here, was looking forward to this day, got time for her to go in the pen. She was going in with Todd. And Todd is really one of the most laid back, lazy horses you could ever come across. Still. And she got in the pen, and Todd started running around like an absolute maniac. He was galloping and bucking and would not stop.
Wow.
I'm like, first of all, we gotta make sure she's safe and figure out what's going on here. So I said, can I come in with you? I went to the middle of the pen, just got her with me and started talking while Todd is spinning around. And come to find out that about 5 minutes before it was her turn, she had taken a phone call. And she had been informed of the death of a family friend. But because she was here and didn't want to ruin her experience and wanted to have a good experience, she suppressed that, put it aside, got in the pen with Todd. Well, Todd wasn't having it. Right? Like, incongruence, incongruence, incongruence.
Yeah.
And so when she finally told me what had happened and let the tears come, Todd stopped immediately and was like,
Thank you. I was getting tired.
yeah. So, wonderful for her. Learn the true impact that suppressing our emotions and having that incongruence that really has on and
Yeah, for sure. What do you find, and thank you for sharing those. Those are beautiful and such powerful stories. What do you find, I know you work with veterans, what are some of the things that they get out of, like a veteran that's coming back having trouble adjusting? And I know everybody's different, but are there some similarities that what comes out of that? What comes out of those times with the horses?
Yeah, I think there is, first of all, I think a lot of times there is a mutual understanding. Like the veterans feel like they appreciate and understand how the horses might feel when they come into retirement,
Okay.
have been valued for what they do, performance wise, or their jobs, right, for so long. And then they don't do that anymore and kind of, thrown out to a pasture.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't do that with them here. We throw them out in the pasture, but
Yeah.
much love and attention. Yeah. But I think there's a little bit of that. They resonate with the horses in that story. And more than anything, I think the veterans get that sense of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
They, I've had a lot of them voice to me feeling like they're okay and that they're worthy
Mm-hmm.
and that they can be loved, that they're lovable.
Mm-hmm.
Horses show that to them.
Yeah.
And I think that goes such a long way because, they're struggling, maybe feeling like there's a flaw, or they should be ashamed of some of the things that they're facing, their anxiety
Mm-hmm.
or, their fear or their anger. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of anger,
Yeah.
right? So those are all emotions that society has judged as negative, um, not desirable to have or to express. And so they work very hard to be strong and not have those or show those. And the horses say, hey, it's perfectly okay for you. And in fact, we'd like for you to, because then that's where we come together and connect and heal.
Exactly. What about somebody that I know we spoke of, somebody that's had a cancer diagnosis and gone through treatment and then is stepping back into a new normal? How is that? How do the horses support that? And what are some of those feelings? Probably some of the similar ones, but
Yeah, pretty much the similar ones. And, and I think also trying to, what we hear from people who are cancer survivors or any other major illness for that matter, going back, it's like they get cured or their treatment is over and they've been focused so much on that, they haven't thought much about the emotional piece or had the bandwidth to do that.
mm-hmm.
And it ends and it's like, all right, go back in the world, good luck. And they get there and they're, wow, I don't know how to do this anymore. So much of my worldview has changed. My values might have changed. My perspective on things has shifted. And I'm not relating in the same way to my life that I used to.
Yeah.
And horses, again, in holding that space and in letting people be okay with however they feel, proving to people, I think that's probably it. Proving to people that when you show up with whatever it is you have, authentically, with an open heart, it will be okay. You will find your way, but you have to be okay trusting that and having a little vulnerability. But the horses do that, and as soon as the people allow themselves to be there, the horses swoop in, right?
Yeah.
so quick, happens like that. And they're like, hey, we're here for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stand next to you. They'll follow you. They'll nuzzle you. They'll, cry with you.
Yeah.
They'll,
So then, and so much of this keeps coming back to new normal, and how do you, what everybody's going through now, what are they, how can they show, what are they showing us now that we can learn from? I mean, that's really how humanity needs the horses sort of started, with a picture and a phrase, putting them together and going, wait a minute, yeah, humanity really, they really do need this now. So what, and maybe that's touching, going to our next question of that bigger picture, but how does that bigger picture of what the horses in that model, and what you've said here is just, what does that bigger picture show us as a society, not necessarily as an individual? What can they, what is the feedback in that? Where's the messages in that?
yeah, this is something that, obviously I've been spending some time with. And I've been asking them just that. I've been looking to them to help myself navigate through this. First and foremost, I think the idea of slowing down. Again, I've spoken of this over and over in this interview. Is to that present place, to that present moment, because that's where you find a bit of peace and a bit of comfort. Because if I can sit with the horses and just be with them, just being rather than doing,
Mm-hmm.
then I feel safe, because I realize I'm safe right there in that moment. I can breathe. Everything is okay right here and now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where creativity comes from. I think they have really shown me that slowing down and taking that time is so important for all of us, and they're kind of grateful, really, because I mean, even before this, I worked so hard. I was running 24/7.
Yeah.
I still work hard, but it changed the way I approach it. And I'm okay with taking breaks, and I'm okay with things not being so perfect, and I'm okay with saying, this could maybe wait till tomorrow if needed. Like, how am I feeling? So they asked me to check in with myself. So I think that's what they are asking of us. I think the collective sigh is, whew, God, maybe they'll slow down for just a minute.
I
And,
love that.
just be.
Collective. Yeah.
And this is an opportunity, and kind of a forced opportunity for us to do that. I don't think I knew my life was chaotic. I knew I was going 100 miles an hour,
Yeah.
until I stop and reflect and watch how they spend their days. You know,
For
I
sure.
don't it hit me how much of a negative influence that was having on the
For
way I
sure.
was. So I think that's a big one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have to say, if people are here and haven't seen your morning feedings, go onto your website, or I don't know if that's on your page, but just your morning feedings. Oh, they were treasures for me, just to go and just watch you feed the horses. And having had the farm myself, it was able to sort of go back a bit and be present, but sort of remember those smells and those moments of presence with the
Ah,
horses. So thank you for sharing those, because I think maybe we don't know those little things that we share, how big they are for others.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
very. I mean that was a very spontaneous thing. I was like, oh, let's just film this because it's so fun. I love it because horses, they like routine.
Yes. Yeah.
Horses
Yeah.
like routine, and they have routine and ritual. I think
Hmm.
helps quite a bit, and I think that's another thing that we can take from this time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So my final question is always, um, if you had one call to action, and I say you, and I mean you as in all of you in the picture here. If you had one call to action for humanity, or for humans out there, what would it be?
So I think it's kind of a phrase that keeps coming to my mind, which is a belief in what's possible.
Okay.
Really starts to come to the forefront when I think about that. That you know we have a lot of choice in what happens next, and we
Mm,
often get that. You can each of us can play a role in making a bit of difference. And like just like you said about the morning feedings, one little small thing that
mm,
goes somewhere and goes out into the world can have a huge impact and you don't even realize it. So
yeah,
modeling being present and modeling that acceptance of whatever is, it opens up a space where we can be creative and be empowered to then step into a future that we envision. Right? So
for
I
sure.
think that's the call to action. I think that's what we have an opportunity to do now if we choose to trust in that and believe that there is possibility. I mean, that's where the future emerges from, is the here and now. So it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
written yet, right? So
Yeah.
write it.
Exactly. 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 Well, thank you. I don't know what to say, but thank you. You know, it's funny. I don't know if you can see behind you, but those 4 horses, and there was another one there too. There they are.
Yeah,
Have literally stood in a circle the whole time. They've
yeah,
moved within that circle, but they've literally held that space the whole time. I don't think one of them has left the screen.
they're just so cool, and
I
they're
just,
really fast. And I thought one of them might come over and say hi, but
one
it's so.
came a little close.
I thought because horses are curious, they want to something new is in the pasture. But then I laughed and I said, no, I come out and sit with them all the time. This is nothing unusual to them.
No, no, but they've held that circle, which I just find so interesting. They have not. They've changed spots in that circle, but they have not changed the circle at all in an hour's time.
They're pretty.
Amazing. Yeah, just as
Yeah.
special as their mom.
Thank
So, well, thank you, Julie, for and you were. I think we're just about out of shade, so I think our timing's good. Thank you all for showing up. Thank you, Julie, so much. I thank you, thank you. The recording is going to be up shortly, the end of the day, hopefully, and stay. I'd say stay warm, but I'm from Canada. Stay cool, but stay well, stay safe, and thank you to you and your herd for being here.
you
All
so
right,
much. We enjoyed it. Thank you very
awesome.
much.
Okay,
All right.
thanks, guys. Okay,
Bye bye.
take care. Bye bye.